Thank you, Mr Holloway. It's an honour to serve under your chairmanship. In late January, I was able to attend a launch event put together by the International Human Rights Organisation and anti-torture NGO Redress and the Parliamentary Human Rights Group of Redress's new report, Beyond Discretion, the Protection of British Nationals Abroad. The report uses their experience of working with British torture survivors and their families over the past 25 years when trying to get the help of the UK government. Under international law, through the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, to which the UK is a party, all states have a right to intervene on behalf of its nationals abroad to ensure their fundamental rights are respected. It is important to recognise that this is not the same as interfering in cases. Among other protections, the VCCR allows for the freedom to communicate between consular officials and the detained person, as well as the freedom of access to them through consular visits. Every year, nearly 6,000 British nationals are arrested or detained abroad, and within that figure, over 100 people tell the Foreign and Commonwealth Office that they have been tortured or ill-treated while abroad. In 2016, which is the latest data available, the FCO delivered assistance to 118 British nationals who alleged that they had been tortured. The total number who have been tortured is, of course, likely to be higher, as some might not be able to report such violations or have the chance to. One such case is that of Jagtar Singh Johal. Jagtar travelled to India to marry his fiancée in October 2017, and on the 4th of November, while out shopping, he was seized by plainclothes officers, hooded and abducted. Following a brief court hearing, he was held incommunicado by Indian police for 9 days in an undisclosed location, and he was denied all access to lawyers, British consular staff and family members. On the 10th of November, Jagtar was secretly presented in court while his lawyer and British consular staff were outrageously left outside the courtroom waiting to be called. They were informed, along with the media, after he had been presented before the court and had left the courtroom. Subsequently, witnesses reported that Jagtar had great difficulty standing and walking and had to be assisted by the police officers escorting him in and out of the courtroom, supporting Jagtar's claim of severe torture.
I'm extremely grateful for the honourable member for getting this short debate to the floor of the House. Do they not agree that the forthcoming Commonwealth Heads of Government Summit here in London is a prime opportunity for the government to tackle head-on the Indian government in terms of the claims of torture against my constituent Jagtar Singh Johal whilst in early detention in India?
I thank my honourable member for that intervention, and absolutely it's a question that I will be posing later on in my speech to the Minister. When Jagtar first briefly met his lawyer in the courtroom on the 14th of November, he made allegations of severe torture between the 5th to the 9th of November. This included leg separation, electric shocks to his ears, nipples and genitals. He has told lawyers that police also forced him to sign blank pieces of paper believed to be for the purpose of forging confessions from him. After much lobbying with British consular staff, they were eventually able to meet Jagtar on the 16th of November, some 12 days after his abduction, torture and interrogation. And 2 senior police officers remained in the same interrogation room to prevent a private conversation. The experienced consular officer present assessed and concluded that Jagtar was prevented from fully opening up about his mistreatment and to show signs of torture, but was declared vulnerable. To date, the Indian authorities have unacceptably prevented Jagtar having private access to British consular staff. And I would like to ask the Minister today to offer some explanation as to why it is that the Indian authorities prevented him from having private access and what actions they have taken in the last 130 days to address this unacceptable state of affairs. I will.
Congratulate her on bringing this matter to Westminster Hall for consideration. I've been asked by the Honourable Member for Hampstead and Kilburn regarding her constituent Nazim Zaghari Ratcliffe, who has been in prison in Iran for just under 2 years. We all know the story. It's a very, very clear one. Separated from her husband Richard, who lives in West Hampstead, and her daughter Gabriella, who is living with her parents in Tehran. And does she agree with me that this case can never be forgotten about? It's important that we renew our efforts to free her and bring her home, but also to bring all those other people home as well.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention on the case of Nazneen, which has been in the public arena for some time, and her husband is here today in this debate, and I shall be also touching upon her case because I think absolutely, equally, extremely important. On the 21st of November, in response to a parliamentary question by Martin Dr Hughes, the Foreign Minister, Rory Stewart, described Jagtar's treatment as unconstitutional and warned of extreme action against the Indian authorities. For a large part of his detention, Jagtar has been in police as opposed to judicial custody. In police custody, apart from severe degree torture, he has been abused and mistreated. Sleep deprivation techniques, constant verbal abuse, solitary confinement and use of handcuffs 24 hours a day and misinformation about his family and the British authorities have been used to mentally exploit and demoralise Jagtar. In December 2017, Redress called on the UN Special Rapporteur on torture to intervene in Jagtar's case and call on the Indian government to ensure he is protected from further torture and is provided an immediate independent medical examination that he has been denied despite repeated requests by his lawyer, and that the allegations of torture are investigated according to international law. The next hearing for such a medical will be held sometime in March, almost 4 months after the alleged torture took place. And again, I will be asking the Minister to please provide an update on the steps taken to secure an independent medical examination and any necessary medical treatment following the allegations of torture. Jagtar's case... I will.
Tom Brake.
I think she just briefly touched on it, but might be about to touch on it in greater detail. Does she agree with me and the point made by Redress that if the government were able to provide a higher level of consular assistance and also some consistency and clarity on the circumstances in which they would provide that, it would not only help cases like Nazanin and Jagtar's, but also if it were extended to those who are seriously injured abroad, which is also a significant issue, constituents like mine, Robbie Hughes, who suffered a very serious attack whilst abroad.
CCR, and absolutely correct, we need to be making sure that we are using our position in light of that to raise such issues as well with injured individuals. As I was saying, that Jagtar's case is extremely serious, but has become farcical and trialled by media. He has been brought to court over 30 times over the past 4 months and has been taken in and out of judicial and police custody. He's currently being held in judicial custody until the 3rd of April. And I understand the Foreign and Commonwealth Office has raised concerns in writing that confidential police investigation videos of Jagtar taken when he was under due arrest have inappropriately been released to Indian TV stations by the Indian authorities. Is it the case that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office have complained to the Indian authorities that Jagtar is facing trial by media and that this will mean if Jagtar is charged, he will never get a fair trial? The British High Commission has never been able to meet Jagtar in private, and requests for private access to him have been repeatedly denied. And I would like to go into more detail about the importance of private visits with consular officials in cases like Jagtar's. The VCCR states that nationals should be free to communicate and to have access to consular officers. And in cases of torture, often authorities will be present in the room or will find other ways of monitoring and controlling interactions with the individual. The International Committee of the Red Cross, which conducts prison visits throughout the world to ensure humane treatment, recognises that private interviews are the only way to make it possible to hear the individual's point of view. In addition, the United Nations Committee Against Torture has called on states to insist on unrestricted consular access to its nationals who are detained abroad, with facility for unmonitored meetings and, if required, for appropriate medical expertise. In short, private visits are essentially to ensure the safety of victims of torture, and consular assistance is an important humanitarian safeguard and provides a crucial link with the outside world. Sometimes it is the only link. I am aware that the UK has said that it is a priority to meet Jagtar in private, but it is unacceptable that after 130 days they have not been able to do so. As I conclude my remarks about Jagtar, I would like to ask the Minister, will the Foreign Secretary meet the family of Jagtar, who are concerned with the priority being given to this case, and will the Prime Minister...
I think you're absolutely right to ask that the Foreign Secretary actually meets the family. I have had many constituents contact me on this particular case because they're deeply concerned, because many of them also visit India. And they want to make sure that proper protection is available. And I think it would be appropriate for the government to give higher priority to this case.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention, and as he suggested, there have been lots of individuals that have approached many members of this House from all sides, stating that they're very concerned about visiting India, given what's happened in Jagtar Singh Johal's case. And I therefore then ask the Minister, will the Prime Minister raise Jagtar's case with Narendra Modi when she meets him next month in London, given she spoke to the BBC and showed interest in Jagtar's case within days of his abduction and torture? On a broader level, I would like to ask the Minister for an update on the case of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. Nazanin, once again, has had no access to consular services, was placed in solitary confinement for 8.5 months in a cell measuring just 1.5 times 2 square metres, and has been subjected to maximum psychological pressure on her, with the intention of demoralising her and putting her in a situation of complete powerlessness, and has seen the charges levelled against her being prosecuted in a secret and unfair trial. Her treatment has had a severe impact on her mental and physical health. As hopes for her release were dashed over Christmas, what action is the UK government taking to ensure she's protected from any further torture and ill treatment, and that she is released as soon as possible? I will.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for securing this really important debate. On this point about Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, does she agree with me that we need to review what support is given to dual nationals and ensure that we offer protection to people that are dual nationals when travelling to hostile states?
I thank my honourable member for that intervention, and he raised a really important point around dual nationals and making sure that they have equally the rights that they're entitled to. And in Nazanin's case, she should have had access to British consular services. Finally, I would also like to raise the case of Antti Segi, a British national who's been arbitrarily detained in Ethiopia since 2014, when he was kidnapped and rendered to Ethiopia on the command of the Ethiopian government as part of a brutal crackdown on political opponents and civil rights activists. After being kidnapped, Andy was held in secret detention in solitary confinement for over a year. He has been paraded on Ethiopian TV looking ill and gaunt. Andy is held under a sentence of death that was handed down in absentia while he was living in London, in a trial that was lacking basic elements of due process. He has no contact with his family in London, despite promises from the Foreign Secretary over a year ago to facilitate a family visit, and he is not receiving appropriate medical care. These three individuals represent just a fraction of the number of British nationals imprisoned abroad. Whilst I would not call for the government of this country to interfere in the internal affairs of another sovereign state, or proclaim that due process not be followed, we cannot sit idly by whilst British citizens are deprived of some of the most basic rights that we hold dear. An integral part of being a responsible member of the global community is to conduct oneself in accordance with the international rules and norms, none more so than the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which states that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. The government is obliged to ensure that all British citizens are subject to this protection, and I call on them to use every legitimate means to ensure that no British citizen should have to suffer this unlawful and inhumane treatment. Thank you.